The early years of Marcel Petiot, a troubled beginning. Marcel-André Henri Félix Petiot was born on January 17, 1897. He was born in Auxerre, France. His early life showed signs of unusual behavior. Some reports suggest he was a highly intelligent child. However, he was also prone to acts of delinquency and violence. These early behaviors were often dismissed or overlooked by those around him. He was known to be disruptive in school. His unsettling tendencies would later manifest in more sinister ways, shaping the man he would become and the dark path he would eventually choose to follow in his adult life. This foundation of instability was crucial. Petiot's adolescence was marked by further disturbances. He was expelled from several schools due to his conduct. There were reports of him firing his father's revolver in class. He also allegedly propositioned a female classmate. During World War I, Petiot enlisted in the French army in January 1916. His military service was erratic. He was wounded and gassed. He also faced accusations of self-inflicted injuries and theft of army blankets. His behavior led to several stints in psychiatric hospitals. He was eventually diagnosed with various mental illnesses, yet he was deemed fit enough to return to the front lines before being discharged with a disability pension. Despite his troubled youth and questionable mental state, Petiot pursued a medical education. He completed his studies with an accelerated curriculum designed for war veterans. He received his medical degree in December 1921. He then interned at a mental hospital in Évreux. It was during this time he began to hone his skills of manipulation. He learned how to present a facade of normalcy. This ability would serve him well in his later criminal endeavors. His medical knowledge, unfortunately, would become a tool for harm rather than healing, a disturbing perversion of his chosen profession. His early career as a doctor began in Villeneuve-sur-Yonne. He quickly gained a reputation among the local population. Some saw him as a dedicated and capable physician. He offered free consultations to the poor. This built a loyal patient base for him. However, behind this veneer of respectability, darker activities were already taking place. There were rumors of illegal abortions. There were also whispers about his liberal prescription of addictive drugs. These early transgressions were mere shadows of the horrors that he would later orchestrate in the heart of Paris during a time of global conflict. A doctor's descent, early crimes and deceit in Villeneuve. In Villeneuve-sur-Yonne, Dr. Marcel Petiot quickly became a prominent figure. He was elected mayor in 1926. His political career, much like his medical practice, was soon mired in controversy. He used his position for personal gain. There were numerous accusations of financial misconduct. He was accused of embezzling town funds. He also rigged local elections to maintain his power. These actions demonstrated a clear pattern of deceit and a disregard for the law. His ambition was not for public service, but for self-enrichment and control over others. He manipulated the system to his advantage consistently. During his tenure as mayor and local doctor, several suspicious events occurred. There were unexplained disappearances and deaths in the town. Louise Delavaux, an elderly patient whose disappearance coincided with Petiot gaining access to her considerable fortune, was one such case. Another was the mysterious death of a local farmer who had publicly argued with Petiot. While investigations were sometimes initiated, Petiot often managed to evade serious scrutiny. He used his medical authority and political influence to deflect suspicion. The small town's setting perhaps made it easier for him to cover his tracks effectively for a period. Petiot's medical practice itself was a source of illicit income. He was known to perform illegal abortions, a risky but lucrative activity at the time. He also overprescribed narcotics, potentially creating dependencies among his patients. These activities, while criminal, were not unique to him during that era. However, with Petiot, they formed part of a larger tapestry of exploitation. He seemed to view his patients not as individuals needing care, but as opportunities for profit or manipulation. This predatory mindset was becoming increasingly evident in all aspects of his life, hidden beneath a carefully crafted public image. The accumulation of scandals eventually led to his downfall in Villeneuve-sur-Yonne. He was suspended as mayor in 1931 due to charges of embezzlement. He was later removed from office. Despite these setbacks, he avoided significant legal consequences for his more serious suspected crimes. This pattern of escaping justice would embolden him. He decided to relocate to Paris in the early 1930s. He sought a larger, more anonymous environment where his activities might go unnoticed. The move to the capital city would provide him with a grander stage for his increasingly dark ambitions as war loomed over Europe. Paris in the shadow of war, an atmosphere of fear and opportunity. When World War II began, Paris was soon under German occupation. This started in June 1940. The city transformed dramatically. Swastikas flew over iconic landmarks. German soldiers patrolled the streets. Fear and uncertainty became a part of daily life for Parisians. Food shortages were common, curfews were strictly enforced. The once vibrant city of light dimmed under the weight of oppression. This oppressive atmosphere created widespread anxiety. People lived in constant dread of arrests, deportations, and the brutality of the occupying forces, particularly the Gestapo and their French collaborators. For many, especially Jewish residents, members of the resistance, and those wanted by the German authorities, the situation was perilous. The Nazis implemented discriminatory laws against Jewish people. They were forced to wear yellow stars. Their businesses were confiscated. Roundups and deportations to concentration camps became terrifyingly frequent. Resistance fighters operated in secrecy, risking torture and execution if caught. The desire to escape France, to find a safe haven from persecution, was overwhelming for these vulnerable groups. They were desperate for any means of flight, any glimmer of hope in a darkening world. This climate of fear and desperation created a fertile ground for opportunists. Black markets thrived, informers betrayed their neighbors for rewards, and some individuals like Dr. Marcel Petiot saw a unique chance to exploit the vulnerable. The chaos of war provided a smokescreen for criminal activities. Law enforcement was fragmented and often compromised. The focus of the authorities was primarily on maintaining order as defined by the occupiers and suppressing resistance. This breakdown of normal societal structures allowed predators to operate with greater impunity than they might have in peacetime. Petiot understood this environment perfectly. He recognized that people in desperate situations would be willing to pay exorbitant sums for a chance at safety. He also knew they would be less likely to ask difficult questions or report suspicious behavior if they believed he was their only hope. The war offered him a unique confluence of vulnerable victims and reduced oversight. He could leverage the widespread panic and the breakdown of trust to his advantage. Paris under occupation was not just a backdrop for his crimes, it was an essential ingredient in their horrifying success for a period. The false savior Dr. Eugene's phantom escape network. In the midst of occupied Paris, Dr. Marcel Petiot began to cultivate a new persona. He presented himself as Dr. Eugene. This fictitious character was supposedly a patriot. He claimed to be part of a secret resistance network. This network, he said, specialized in smuggling people out of France. He targeted those most desperate to flee, Jewish individuals, resistance fighters, and even common criminals wanted by the Germans. He spread rumors of his network through intermediaries. He let it be known that Dr. Eugene could arrange safe passage to South America or other neutral countries, a highly desirable prospect. Petiot's methods were cunning and carefully designed to inspire trust. He would meet potential clients in secret. He would speak of the dangers involved and the necessity of absolute discretion. He insisted that his motives were purely patriotic. He claimed he wanted to help those persecuted by the Nazis and the Vichy regime. He charged substantial fees for his services, often demanding all of the victims' valuables. He justified these high costs by explaining they were needed to bribe officials and fund the complex escape route. People desperate for salvation readily believed his elaborate lies. The escape route itself was a complete fabrication. There was no network, there were no contacts in South America, there were no secret passages or safe houses beyond his own property. Petiot's entire operation was a sophisticated trap. He told his victims they would need inoculations for their journey abroad. This was a pretext to inject them with lethal substances, most likely cyanide. He assured them this was a necessary precaution for travel. His medical knowledge lent credibility to this deadly deception. He played on their hopes and fears with chilling precision. Victims were instructed to write letters to their families. These letters would be mailed from abroad, creating the illusion they had arrived safely. This clever tactic delayed any suspicion or investigation into their disappearances. Petiot collected their luggage, money, jewels, and personal belongings before murdering them. He was meticulous in his planning. He ensured that every detail of his ruse contributed to the victims' belief in their imminent escape. This false hope made them compliant and unsuspecting until the very end, walking willingly into his deadly snare. Section 5. The House on Rue Le, a Chamber of Horrors, revealed. Dr. Petiot acquired a townhouse at 21 Rue Le in Paris. This elegant building, located in a respectable neighborhood near the Arc de Triomphe, would become the epicenter of his horrific crimes. Outwardly, it appeared to be the residence of a successful physician. However, Petiot made significant modifications to the property. He created a specially designed soundproof room in the basement, or a consultation room. This room was reportedly equipped with a peephole. This allowed him to observe his victims as they succumbed to the poisons he administered under the guise of medical necessity for their supposed escape. The methods Petiot employed were cold and calculated. After luring victims to Rue Le with promises of escape, he would prepare them for their journey. This preparation often involved the aforementioned lethal injections. He convinced them these injections were necessary vaccinations for travel to foreign countries. Once the victims were incapacitated or dead, Petiot would then proceed to dispose of their bodies. He used various gruesome methods. These included dismemberment and the use of a quicklime pit in the basement. He also had a large furnace, seemingly for burning the remains. The sheer scale of his operation within the house was horrifying. He processed victim after victim, all while maintaining his medical practice and outward appearance of respectability. The neighbors occasionally noticed foul odors emanating from the property. Some also heard strange noises. However, during the chaos of wartime Paris, such occurrences might not have immediately triggered an official alarm. Petiot was adept at providing plausible explanations if questioned. He might claim he was conducting scientific experiments, relying on his status as a doctor to deflect suspicion effectively. The interior of 21 Rue Le, when finally uncovered, painted a chilling picture. It was not just a home, but a factory of death. Tools for dismemberment were found. Large quantities of quicklime were discovered. Most damningly, the remains of numerous individuals were eventually unearthed. The house stood as a silent testament to Petiot's depravity. It was a place where hope turned into unimaginable terror. The full extent of what occurred within its walls would only come to light through a shocking discovery that alerted the authorities to the monster in their midst. Section 6. Exploiting desperation, the motive of insatiable greed. While Petiot sometimes claimed patriotic motives for his alleged escape network, his true driving force was insatiable greed. He systematically stripped his victims of all their worldly possessions. Before their departure, he instructed them to bring all their cash, jewelry, furs, and any other valuables. He told them these items could be converted to funds needed for their new lives abroad. This was, of course, another lie. He had no intention of helping them. He only wanted to enrich himself through their misfortune and ultimate demise. His avarice knew no bounds. Petiot was meticulous in his plundering. Evidence later revealed that he kept detailed inventories of the goods he stole from his victims. He catalogued everything from expensive artworks and suitcases filled with clothing to small personal trinkets. This systematic approach showed a cold, businesslike attitude towards his murderous enterprise. He was not just a killer, he was a thief on a grand scale. The sheer volume of stolen goods found in his possession was staggering. It indicated a long period of operation and a large number of victims who had trusted him with their lives and fortunes. The desperation of his victims made them easy prey for his financial exploitation. People fleeing persecution were often carrying their entire life savings. They were willing to part with considerable sums for the promise of safety. Petiot preyed on this vulnerability without remorse. He understood that their primary concern was survival, not the details of financial transactions. The war had created a class of people who were both wealthy and terrified. This combination was irresistible to a predator like Petiot. He saw them as walking treasure chests, ripe for the taking. The profits from his gruesome activities were substantial. Petiot accumulated a considerable fortune. He invested in properties and lived comfortably, all while Paris suffered under occupation. This wealth was built upon the stolen dreams and extinguished lives of countless individuals. His greed was not a byproduct of his crimes, it was the primary engine. The elaborate charade of Dr. Eugene and the escape network was merely the mechanism he devised to satisfy his lust for money and possessions. He turned human suffering into his personal goldmine, a truly despicable enterprise. Section 7. The Unmasking, a grisly discovery, ignites an investigation. The unmasking of Dr. Marcel Petiot began on March 11, 1944. Neighbours living near his townhouse at 21 Rue Le Sueur became alarmed. They complained of a noxious stench emanating from the building. They also saw thick, foul-smelling smoke billowing from the chimney. Fearing a chimney fire, especially dangerous during wartime, they alerted the authorities. Police officers and firefighters were dispatched to the scene. They found the house locked and seemingly unoccupied. The smell, however, was overpowering and deeply unsettling, hinting at something far worse than a simple fire. Unable to rouse anyone inside, the firefighters decided to force entry. What they discovered within the seemingly respectable townhouse was a scene of unimaginable horror. In the basement, they found a coal-burning stove roaring at full capacity. Human remains were visibly burning inside. Further investigation revealed piles of dismembered body parts, skulls, limbs, and torsos were scattered around. They also found a pit filled with quicklime containing more human remains in various stages of decomposition. The sheer quantity of bodies was shocking to the experienced officers. Initially, some believed they had stumbled upon the hideout of resistance fighters. They thought perhaps the Germans had discovered it and massacred them. However, the methodical nature of the dismemberment and disposal suggested something else. It pointed towards a single, systematic killer, rather than a wartime atrocity committed by occupying forces. Dr. Petiot, the owner of the house, was nowhere to be found. A note was conveniently left behind, claiming he was called away to a patient. The police immediately recognized the gravity of their discovery, and a full-scale investigation was launched. The news of the gruesome find at Rue Le Sueur quickly spread through Paris, despite wartime censorship. It caused a sensation and widespread fear. The authorities began the grim task of identifying the victims. They also started piecing together the puzzle of who Dr. Petiot truly was. The House of Horrors had revealed its secrets. The city was now aware that a prolific murderer had been operating in its midst. The hunt for Dr. Marcel Petiot, the man behind the carnage, began in earnest, as Paris reeled from the shocking revelations. Section 8. On the run, the manhunt for Captain Valery. Following the horrific discovery at his Rue Le Sueur townhouse, Dr. Marcel Petiot vanished. He became the most wanted man in France. The police launched an intensive manhunt. However, Petiot proved to be elusive. He was intelligent and resourceful. He understood how to blend in and evade capture. The chaotic backdrop of a Paris on the verge of liberation in August 1944 further complicated the search efforts. Authorities were dealing with the retreating Germans and the rise of French resistance forces, making the hunt for a single criminal more challenging. Amazingly, Petiot managed to hide in plain sight for several months. He adopted a new identity. He recalled himself to Captain Henri Valery. Under this guise, he joined the French forces of the Interior, FFI. This was the formal name for the resistance fighters during the liberation period. He claimed to have killed Germans and collaborators. His fabricated war record even earned him a position in counter-espionage. He was tasked with interrogating captured Germans and suspected traitors. The irony was profound. A mass murderer was now posing as a war hero and hunting others. His time with the FFI provided him with a degree of cover. It also allowed him to move around more freely. However, the net was slowly closing. The Parisian police, particularly Inspector Georges Victor Massou, were relentless in their pursuit. They meticulously gathered evidence from Rue Le Sueur. They identified more victims. They also began to see through the rumors Petiot himself had spread. He had tried to portray himself as a resistance hero, eliminating collaborators. This was a desperate attempt to justify his crimes if caught, but the evidence pointed overwhelmingly to murder for profit. The breakthrough in the manhunt came in October 1944. Petiot, still operating as Captain Valery, was recognized at a Paris metro station. Someone who knew him from his past life alerted the authorities. He was arrested on October 31st. His 7 months on the run were over. When captured, he was reportedly carrying a pistol, a large sum of money, and documents under several false names. The man who had eluded justice for so long, who had thrived in the chaos of war, was finally in custody. His capture paved the way for one of France's most sensational trials. Section 9. Justice for Dr. Satan: Trial, Conviction and Infamous Legacy. The trial of Marcel Petiot began on March 18, 1946. It captivated France and the international press. The courtroom was packed daily. Petiot faced charges for the murder of 27 people. However, authorities believed the true number of his victims was much higher, possibly over 60. During the trial, Petiot remained defiant and arrogant. He claims that his victims were German collaborators, traitors, or double agents. He insisted he was a patriot who had eliminated enemies of France. This defense was designed to appeal to post-liberation sentiments. Petiot's performance in court was theatrical. He frequently interrupted proceedings. He insulted the prosecutors and judges. He tried to portray himself as a misunderstood hero. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming. The sheer volume of human remains found in his house was undeniable. The meticulous records of stolen goods further undermined his claims of patriotic motives. Witnesses testified about his escape network and the vast sums of money he demanded. The prosecution methodically dismantled his defense, painting a clear picture of a cold, calculating murderer driven by greed. The jury was not swayed by Petiot's dramatics or his claims of patriotism. After a lengthy trial on March 28, 1946, they found him guilty of 26 counts of murder. He was sentenced to death by guillotine. Throughout the trial, and even after his conviction, Petiot showed little remorse for his actions. He maintained his innocence, or at least his twisted justification for the killings. His appeals were rejected. The man nicknamed Dr. Satan by the press was finally brought to justice for his horrific crimes against so many innocent people. Marcel Petiot was executed on May 25, 1946. His case remains one of the most infamous in French criminal history. He exploited the chaos and desperation of World War II for personal gain. He turned the trust of vulnerable people into a weapon against them. His crimes highlighted the dark underbelly that can thrive during times of conflict. The legacy of Dr. Marcel Petiot is a chilling reminder of human depravity. He stands as a symbol of how a seemingly respectable individual can harbor monstrous secrets and commit unspeakable acts, forever etching his name into the annals of serial murder.